The history books document the visible wars, the armed confrontations, the mass sacrifices, tanks, ships, battalions, kinetic power in its purest form. But the most crucial war of all is silent, it is invisible, and it is being fought right now in the most valuable territory on the planet: your mind. We sit here, we swallow the chaos, the division, the incessant noise that fills every platform 24 hours a day. We are presented with two distinct camps, two opposing tribes, and the official narrative insists they are locked in a fundamental struggle for the nation's soul. We are forced to pick a side, to polarize, to define ourselves by this dichotomy. But look past the noise. What if the conflict you see is not the main event? What if the friction itself is the product being sold, and we are just the consumers? That is what we are decoding tonight. We will pull the thread of the narrative and expose the mechanism behind the curtain. The two central architects of modern discord, two titans who use billions to structure the information that structures your reality, George Soros and Rupert Murdoch. And by the end of this video, you will understand why both men need each other. The myth of ideology and the cost of belief. The popular belief is that this is a war of pure ideology, a clash of worlds between a man who uses his fortune to fund global free market expansion and another who built his empire on the bedrock of traditional cultural values. The story tells us their fight is driven by a sincere passion to shape the world in their philosophical image. But the truth, as always, is colder, and frankly, far more connected to a spreadsheet than to a political manifesto. Because if you follow the money trail, you realize something crucial. Ideology is cheap. It's an off-the-shelf product, mass-produced. On a billionaire's balance sheet, it is simply a cost center, an operational expenditure. It is the ammunition you pay for to ensure your real target is hit. And the prize, the ultimate reward, is not public opinion. Public opinion is just the noisy byproduct. The prize is the lever of power, the amendment, the obscure judicial decision that can shift a multi-billion-dollar tax burden or open up, overnight, a new market for a global operation. The prize is the regulatory certainty that guarantees tomorrow's profit. This is what they are truly betting on. Murdoch and the logistics architecture, kinetic power. Let's start with the root, the foundation of kinetic power, Rupert Murdoch. His strategy is hard power. It is vertical. It is total logistics. Think of his entire operation not as a collection of channels and newspapers, but as a complete distribution network. He didn't just create content, he heavily invested in the infrastructure to deliver it. He bought the printing press, the satellite, the cable line, and the screaming headline itself. And here is where things get truly uncomfortable. His media outlets are not just profitable businesses, they are fixed assets whose primary value is the ability to buy influence, the ability to provide fiercely favorable coverage to a politician in exchange for a regulatory change worth 10 times the network's annual profit. Analysts argue that the cost of operating Fox News is a necessary subsidy for the cost of obtaining the perfect tax legislation, and what comes next dismantles the illusion completely. This is the crucial difference. He is not fighting for the heart of the voter, he is fighting for the ability to have the direct line to the regulator. Murdoch's lobbyists don't spend money, they spend the currency of public attention that his assets generate. That is opinion logistics. The impact is immediate and physical. Speed, pressure, impact. That's why we call it kinetic power. A former regulator once described Murdoch's strategy to a journalist with a stark summary. He doesn't buy politicians, he buys the entire ecosystem. His media empire acts as a kinetic shield that protects his more profitable, less visible operations. It is the machine that builds and destroys reputations. Case study. The real estate shield, an immediate threat. We often talk about the political power, but the financial architecture is the silent motive. Financial reports confirm that News Corp owns vast assets outside the media sphere, particularly in real estate and publishing. Imagine a city council voting on property tax assessments on a large parcel of News Corp land. If an outlet like the Wall Street Journal or a local network affiliate suddenly dedicates overwhelming negative coverage to the council members opposing News Corp's preferred outcome, that isn't journalism. That is the application of kinetic force. The ideological war you see, the screaming headlines, the partisan divide, is the smokescreen that hides these very localized, very profitable, and very boring financial transactions. This is opinion logistics at its most ruthless, the trilogy. But wait, this only accounts for half the equation. You believe the battle is between two men. This is the point where the illusion collapses. The conflict Soros versus Murdoch is not bilateral, it is not a duel, it is a trilogy. For the conflict to be profitable, for the noise to be maximized, it requires a third silent partner. An entity that arbitrates the chaos, sets the ground rules, and ensures the whole system doesn't implode. That invisible arbitrator is the Federal Reserve. The Fed sets the cost of capital. It determines the liquidity in the system. It controls the very economic climate in which Murdoch and Soros make their multi-billion-dollar strategic bets. They fight over the rules, but the Fed controls the table they are playing on. They need the chaos to happen, but they need the Fed to guarantee the stability behind the chaos. This third actor, this silent arbiter, is the key to understanding the game's actual stakes. Soros and the asymmetric architecture, systemic friction. Now we turn the lens, we move from vertical kinetic power to asymmetric friction. The George Soros model is the complementary opposite. He doesn't need to buy the factory or the road, he needs to buy the system's inertia. Remember this, chaos is not the goal, it is the tool. The foundation of his power is the quantum fund and the reputation he built. Think back to 1992. Soros didn't use newspapers or TV, he used pure financial leverage, betting against the British pound. And here is where the entire narrative breaks. Where Murdoch demands speed and immediate threat, Soros practices patience and delay strategic. Where Murdoch targets the legislative branch, Soros targets the judiciary and the civil structure. He is funding systemic inertia. This is the part no one ever tells you. He doesn't buy politicians, he buys delay. He is buying the speed of the system. Critics point out that by funding the opposition, he ensures that any deregulation agenda, which would benefit his rivals, will be slow, expensive, and face legal challenges at every level. He is not buying a politician, he is buying the environment that generates and shapes the policy. The butterfly effect of capital. Imagine the state not as a battlefield, but as a complex clock. Murdoch wants to smash the clock and replace it with a faster, more efficient model. Soros is content to pay to lubricate or clog the most critical gears in the old clock, ensuring its movement, however slow, ultimately favors his long-term financial architecture. He buys the friction that slows the machine down. This is an investment in structure. It is the difference between buying the sword and buying the arsenal of laws that define what is permissible in a fight. He is investing in complexity and bureaucracy because complexity requires capital to navigate, capital that he possesses. The goal is to generate reflexivity in governance. By funding groups that advocate for systemic change, Soros creates a political environment where his long-term financial bets are safer. His funding of local district attorney races is a perfect granular example of this. Analysts assert that this shifts the baseline risk profile of entire urban economies, the polarization engine and competitive exclusion. Here is the final piece of the invisible puzzle, the part that connects Murdoch's strategy with Soros's. Their models are opposites, but they generate the same result: extreme polarization. Murdoch turns up the volume on the narrative to ensure his allies are elected and his legislation is passed. Soros lubricates or obstructs the control mechanisms to ensure any legislation harmful to him is paralyzed or reversed. The true purpose of polarization is, in fact, competitive exclusion. If the political debate were civil, any rival billionaire could purchase influence affordably. But when Murdoch turns the volume up to 11 and Soros floods the judicial and civil systems with complexity, the market entry cost for influence becomes exponentially higher. Only those who possess the infrastructure, Murdoch, or the long-term capital, Soros, can afford the price of admission to this hyper-polarized market. They don't fight on the battlefield, they fight inside the algorithm of governance. The friction, the noise, the conflict you consume daily, that is the toll booth fee that other competitors must pay to have a voice. Polarization is the hidden tax on democracy, and they cannot afford to pay it, but the architects can. The noise is specifically designed to keep you from organizing against the economic elite. The only loser in this equation is the public, whose attention is hijacked and whose voice is drowned out by the cost of participation. That is the final brutal truth. The payoff and the bridge, access, is the currency. And this is the worst part of the whole mechanism. The two architects are not at war for love of the flag or an economic system. They are at war over the ease of access to governance and the control over the price of that access. Friction creates the noise. Noise captures your attention. And while you, the audience, are exhausted picking your team, red or blue, east or west, the architects are already inside the vault. Ideology is the noise floor. Access is the currency. They both win when the system is chaotic and expensive to navigate because they are the only ones who can afford the full price of admission. They structure the war, and we fight it for free. This is the point where the illusion collapses. You have just decoded how two men structure the information that, in turn, structures your reality. But they are not the only invisible force operating just beneath the surface of the news cycle. It is a complex system. It is a financial architecture. Next week, we are diving deep into the cold, calculated heart of global finance. Because the Federal Reserve doesn't just manage the economy, it manages reality itself. The next episode pulls the curtain off the one institution that can reshape a global market with a single sentence. This is the truth that changes everything. It is the one force they both answer to. Stay tuned, hit subscribe, do not miss the next revelation.